right, you've just been watching an address by US President Joe Biden live from Belfast. He was speaking at Ulster University, and some of the highlights of what he said. He says, your history is our history, as he stresses the support for Northern Ireland, and that it's a cause that unites all Americans. He says the American people were with you and are with you every step of the way. And of course also expressed huge interest for American corporates who want to invest in Northern Ireland.
Well, for more on this, we can cross live to London and speak with Arise chief correspondent John Cookson. John, thank you so much for joining us. And of course, I'm sure you've been listening to that speech by the US president. Can you tell us, what made the president's speech stand out? What do you think the impact of his words will be regarding the current political deadlock in Northern Ireland?
Hi, ladies. Good to see you. Well, a very positive, forward-looking speech there from the US president, focusing a little bit on the history, the background to the Belfast Agreement that ended 30 years of bloodshed in 1998, or virtually finished an era of bloodshed. It was at Ulster University. The audience there, a lot of students, and that speech was very much aimed at Ulster's and indeed the rest of Ireland's young people. I think the clear message there that as long as peace continues, then economic prosperity will follow. And the president highlighting the fact there's already been $2 billion worth of US investment in the region. And he said that if peace is maintained, then more will follow. And the young people listening today are part of what's called the so-called peace generation, those who were born after 1998. So he was very astute there in addressing some of their concerns about the future, and a very clear message that if peace prevails, then prosperity will come to that generation and generations that followed. I was very interested to see that it was only a gentle nudge, a suggestion there from the American president to Northern Ireland politicians to get together and end the deadlock, which has collapsed the government in Stormont. The main dispute is over the operation of the Brexit agreement. And he met earlier with the leaders of the five main parties, and he said he hopes that the power-sharing government will be restored. But he made it very clear, that's your judgment, it's not mine. And I think that was a very clever political move by Biden there, not to bully anyone, because the Protestant elements of the political community in Northern Ireland don't react very well to being bullied by a US president, especially a Catholic president who is perceived to favour the nationalist cause, and whether that's true or not is for others to decide. So a very clever speech, a speech that reflected on how difficult it was for the Northern Ireland peace accord to be agreed. It was never a given, and praise for Senator George Mitchell, who was the architect of that agreement, and the politicians that were around at the time, including Sir John Major, the former UK Prime Minister. And then this big message to Northern Ireland's and Ireland's young people: keep the peace, and prosperity will surely follow. And I think that will chime, of course, very much with the young generation. As far as healing the wounds between the political parties, we'll have to wait and see how the informal meeting he had with the various political leaders went. There's been no readout of that. Before he made the speech at Ulster University, he met with the main political parties in the university campus for about half an hour there. So, as I say, long term, we'll have to wait and see if Biden has made any difference in healing the rift between the political parties.
Right. Now, of course, earlier you did refer to some of his earlier engagements. One of those notable ones was with the UK Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, who held talks before this. Now, what more can you tell us about the sit-down that they had?
Yes, he met with Rishi Sunak. Sunak, of course, greeted him on the tarmac when he arrived at Belfast by yesterday, and then they had a half-hour meeting today. It was very, very informal, and these are normally spoken of as bilateral talks. Journalists are calling it bi-latte talks because it was really over a cup of tea or a cup of coffee that they talked. My understanding is that they focus mainly on the issue of Ukraine and not a trade agreement that Sunak hopes to conclude with the Biden administration. Sunak was invited to travel to Washington in June for a further meeting with Biden on that. So the focus today with Sunak was really talking about Ukraine and the way forward and supplying more arms and keeping the arms flow going to Ukraine for the expected offensive, which could get underway later this month against Russian forces in Ukraine. So it seems by the body language there that it was a very friendly get-together, the two men, although not politically aligned. They seemed to get on well together. The body language was good. And as I say, the trade agreement that Sunak hopes to seal with the US will be discussed in much more detail when Sunak goes to Washington in June.
Thank you, John. Now, President Biden is spending less than 24 hours in Northern Ireland, but 3 days in the Republic of Ireland. Is this a snub?
Well, there are politicians, unionist politicians in Northern Ireland who say that he could have spent more time in north of the border, in Belfast and elsewhere. But this very much seems to be Joe Biden looking sentimentally, perhaps, at some of his ancestors in the background. One journalist calls the next 3 days of Biden's visit tree planting, bell ringing, and the taxpayer-funded family reunion. Now, this, of course, a reference to Joe Biden traveling to County Louth and County Mayo to see the ancestral homes of his great-great-grandparents who left Ireland for a new life in America, as thousands of Irish people did. Joe Biden has strongish Irish roots, and he's going on, frankly, a sentimental journey in the next few days. There will be an address to the Irish Parliament. He'll meet with the Irish Premier, the Taoiseach, and also with the Irish President. Also, I suspect that with the presidential election in 2024, and we believe that Biden is going to make a run for a second term, you can be sure, absolutely sure, that cameras will be following him as he goes back to his Irish ancestral roots, and as I say, witnessing the bell ringing and the tree planting that's going to take place in the next couple of days, because that footage will be used in Biden's presidential campaign, if indeed he runs. And I'm sure camera crews will be following and edits will be made, and those images put into electioneering videos for the American people. Because, of course, the Irish-American vote, although relatively small, is hugely powerful in America, and it doesn't do Biden any harm at all to be visiting his Irish roots a year or so out from a presidential election.
All right. Well, thank you for giving us insight into his visit to the Republic of Ireland. And you've already said, of course, that Irish-American vote is not a huge one, but a significant one. What do you think the sentiment will be from the rest of the United States? I mean, right now, everybody is still focused on gun laws and all that's happening in the House of Reps. Do you think Americans will appreciate seeing these images at this time?
It's hard to say. There are major issues in the United States at the moment for the American people. Abortion, mass killings, which just shock not only Americans but the whole world. And Biden himself is dealing with this horrendous leak of secret documents from the Pentagon, which is hugely embarrassing for the Biden administration. And this speech at the Ulster the Ulster University today was timed, I suspect, for the morning shows in America. I don't know how many of them took it. Good Morning America and the like. I think what will happen is that the American networks will focus on the rest of the trip, the Biden's visit to ancestral homes, and pull that together into a sort of sentimental news report rather than focus on what frankly is quite complicated politics of Northern Ireland, which even for us here in the UK is hard to fathom sometimes.
Thank you so much. Arise Chief Correspondent John Cookson, thank you for your analysis of that speech by the US President Joe Biden.